for that link if you'd like to do that. Awesome. All right. Well, that is all the housekeeping that I have. And I want to welcome you all once again to this great event. And I am going to introduce Renee Reiner, co-owner of Phoneix Books. She's right next to me on my screen. I don't know where you can see her, but she is going to introduce Beach to the event. Thank you again for coming. And Renee, take it away.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for me too. Always a pleasure. I do look forward to seeing you all in person in the same space at the same time as soon as we can. We all look forward to that, I know. But thank you for bearing the Zoom. So Beach and I go way back, and his wife Trina Beck, to the creation of Phoneix Books Burlington, which happened at the end of 2011 and opened in 2012. We raised funds from the community to build that store, and Beach and Trina said, we are in. We want a bookstore in our community. We want to support you. Let's do this. And so that's only one of many reasons that Beach and Trina have a very special place in my heart. Their dog Yup is one of my favorite dogs. That's also true. And Beach has been a consummate storyteller since I've known him and had the wonderful opportunity to spend a bunch of time with him over these years. And so it is actually a real pleasure and honor to get some good storytelling going. I won't speak about the book because Beach is going to do that. I just wanted to say nice things about Beach. Have him personalize all the copies. You can, do your holiday shopping now. You can give Beach's book to everyone on your list, and he will personalize all of them. That was my hard sell. And with no further ado, Beach, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. One of the things I'd like to say in the beginning that Renee could have asked me is what the book is about. And the reason I bring this up is because in the previous books, that was the worst possible question I could have been asked because I never had any idea what it was about. But this one is different because I actually do know what it was about, partly because Trina told me, but also because eventually I figured it out. And what it is about, very simply, is that I finally read the writing on the wall, which I had ignored for a long time, but the wall got closer and the writing got bigger. I realized that it was in my own patient's hand, and so finally I read it. You should understand that the town I worked in, the people never got anything but what they achieved by hard work. And sometimes they didn't even get it then. So they were particularly blessed with low expectations. And they knew that, hey, I wasn't the best doctor anywhere, but I was the best doctor they had. And I did the best I could. And that was good enough for them. Kind of like a marriage. It was for better and for worse. So when I said something, they accepted it. But recently that began to change. First, it was just the complainers. And then it was some of my most devoted and loyal patients. And they would never say it outright. And they kind of beat around the bush about it. And they'd say, well, Doc, it's not that I don't trust you. You've always done the best you can by me. And then they'd hem and they'd haw a bit. And then they'd say, the funny thing is I was talking to my cousin Sarah. And she had this same problem that I had. And you know what she said? Well, she went to her doctor. Her doctor told her that what she should do is, anyway, you get the idea. Those two dreaded words, second opinion, which I'd never had before. Right below on the wall, right below second opinion, was the R word, which they would never use in my presence, and they would always disguise it as a compliment. Gee, Doc, it's amazing how well you've done all these years. I don't know how you keep going like this. I mean, you look great for your age. At the bottom, under those words, were three words written in bold, capitalized, quotated as to what they were really meaning. Over the hill. Now, I'm pretty good at denial. Comes with the territory. I'm pretty good at ignoring messages, as my wife would tell you. But I got to admit that this business kind of took the wind out of my sails. So what I did was I talked to Trina, looking for some sympathy. Well, I should have known better. She said, well, why don't you try and find something useful to do? And I said, like what? She said, well, like make amends. So this book is the story of how I did that. and the people who helped me along my journey. And it started with a woman named Brittany Menard, whom I'm going to tell you about. By birth date, she was 30 years old. This surprised me. The few patients I had acquired in recent years were of the same vintage as my regular patients. They had come upon the recommendation of one of their cohorts and were of such an age and health that the last thing they were concerned about was outlasting their doctor. They all wanted the same thing, a doctor who would leave them alone. I couldn't remember the last time I saw someone who was not on Social Security, which, as it turned out, Brittany was. I shouldn't have been surprised when eventually I saw her, much less shocked. I had Cricket's notes before me before I went into the room. Here for a meet and greet. Vital signs: blood pressure 65/42, pulse 110, weight 69 pounds, height 64 inches, BMI 11.8. O2 saturation 91% on 3 liters of oxygen. Meds: OxyContin 40 milligrams twice daily, out. Oxycodone 30 milligrams 4 times daily as needed, out. Xanax 1 milligram 3 times daily, out. Ambien 10 milligrams at bedtime, out. Inhalers, not using. Zithromax, not taking. Pancreatic enzymes, not taking. I knew without asking what her problem was. The weight, the oxygen, the antibiotics, and the pancreatic enzymes made it clear. Brittany had cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis interferes with the ability of the lungs to manage secretions, and it causes emphysema. It interferes with the ability of the intestinal tract to absorb nutrients, causing malnutrition. It weakens the bones. It weakens the liver. There is hardly an organ that cystic fibrosis does not affect. It is a miserable disease. She was in the middle of a coughing spasm when I entered the room. Her head was down and her toothpick-like arms gripped the edge of the chair for support as her chest heaved up and down. There was not an ounce of fat on her body. The outline of her bones protruded from under her paper-thin skin, looking as if they would break through at any minute. It was impossible to feel anything other than compassion for the life she struggled to hold on to. Until she looked up at me. And then suddenly my compassion was replaced by an entirely different sensation: guilt. She had fixed me with a stare so scornful that although we had never met, I had the discomforting sensation that I had done something terribly wrong. "I'm Dr. Conger," I mumbled. "I know who you are," she said in a harsh voice, "and you know who I am." "Brittany Menard." She made a face. "I don't mean my name, mister. I mean, you know who I am." "Well, if you mean, do I know your medical history? Other than the medication list you provided, I don't. I can see, though, that you have cystic fibrosis." Another coughing spell temporarily prevented her response. "Oh, you can you?" she snapped when she recovered her breath. "A brilliant diagnostician, no less. Oh, lucky me." She paused to catch her breath. "But are you telling me, with that straight face of yours, that you have never heard my name mentioned before? Not a word about me and my drug-seeking behavior? Or are you not allowed to tell me because it would be a violation of the God Almighty HIPAA to tell a patient what you really know about her?" "Well, here's the story of me. I'll make it easy for you. I've been kicked out of 4 practices, banned from 3 hospitals, and earned persona non grata status at the Cystic Fibrosis Clinic, which is no mean feat, especially considering that I am what you guys love to call an interesting case. How did I manage to do it, you wonder? It wasn't that hard, actually. I overused my prescriptions. I forged some. When I had to, I sold some pills. I told my doctor I was going to strangle him. "I know," she said, seeing the expression on my face. "Hard to believe, isn't it? And when the security guy came to take me away, I bit him in the hand." "Best experience I ever had in a hospital," she said with a grin, even though it tasted like shit. "So why did I come all the way up here from Unity?" Unity's about an hour and a half away from where I work. You're thinking, it's because of the wonderful doctor I've heard you are, of course. So the fact that this hospital is the only place left where I can reach before my portable oxygen runs out has nothing to do with it. So my question for you, before I waste any more of the breath I don't really have, is, are you going to blow me off like the others, or are you going to give me my meds? Because if you're not, I'm out of here. "Well, I'd like to help you," I said. You got a bad disease, and I'm sure it's been tough. Spare the butt, Doc. I've heard that line 100 times before. I know what it means. Sorry, kid. Sayonara. The diversion, I said. That's why I just can't treat you. You're selling your meds. It's not right. It's against the law. It could put my license at risk. This last issue, although technically true, was specious, and I knew it. Unless a doctor is knowingly providing drugs to be sold, no prosecutor is ever going to go after her. Brittany knew it too. Oh, your precious license, she said. Poor baby. But if you really needed your medication, why did I sell them? Simple. I needed the money. You know how much I get on my Social Security thanks to this fantastic body? She said, holding out her wasted arms. I've never been able to get a job. I get SSI, a whopping $735 a month. Oh yeah, and food stamps. Ever try to live on that? I can't, and I don't. So I do what I got to do with the only asset I have that's worth anything, your medication. That was just once. I was in a jam and I needed cash quick. I don't understand. What asset are you talking about? My body. Your body? Yeah, it sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? Of course, I probably couldn't have done it without some assistance from you guys. And she pulled up her shirt to reveal a rather large and obviously acquired set of breasts that looked totally incongruous with the rest of her body. I couldn't help but stare at them. See, she grinned, even you. Although, in your case, I'll grant you a bit of professional curiosity. It's amazing, though. Something about the guy brain. Doesn't matter what else is around, a big set of boobs, and zap, everything else in sight disappears. You were a prostitute? Hardly, she laughed grimly. But I'll bet there's some out there who would have been turned on by banging a skeleton. Nope, used them for gambling. You gamble with your breasts? In a way. Twice a month I go down to Foxwood, she said, referring to the resort casino in Connecticut. I got a couple of scams I work. Playing the slot is the easiest. First, I check out who's playing. Find me some sad-looking slob of a guy, the older the better, and I set myself up next to him. Play a little bit, give him a little friendly smile now and then, just to keep him there. And then, all of a sudden, I get to crying and gasping and heaving my chest up and down. Pathetic little me. Of course, I make sure he gets a peek at the equipment. So he comes over and asks me, what's the matter? And I say, the machine cheated me. I'm hardly able to get the words out. He gets all sympathetic and poor babies me. Sometimes even puts a hand on my shoulder to comfort me. And then he slips me something, 10, 20 bucks usually. But if he's on a winning streak, 50, maybe even 100. He may ask me to sit next to him for luck. Depending on how heavy the hand is on my shoulder, I might say yes. Playing poker is my favorite, though. I check out the tables, sit myself down to the same kind of guy. After a couple of hands, I pretend like I got a real hot hand, and I get myself all worked up, get up a good coughing spasm, lose my breath, and get that panic, air hunger look. You know the kind I mean. And she produced such a perfect imitation of acute respiratory distress syndrome that even though I knew she was pretending, I could believe it was real. Pretty good, huh? She stopped abruptly and gave me a smile. Should be. Done it enough times for real. Of course, at Foxwood, my blouse is a little too tight and a little too low, and when the silicones get to flashing, poor guy doesn't stand a chance. Just can't keep his eye off him. Swiping a few chips from his pile is easy as pie. But doesn't the dealer see you? Or the security cameras? Ha! You bet they do, she laughed. They think it's a hoot. Even invited me up to their video room once so I could see myself in action. Usually, I make enough to cover the cost of the meds, the cost of the trip, and some extra. And you never got caught? Only once. Had a couple of drinks and got careless. Cost me all my oxys. I didn't get any sleep that night. No, I would guess not, I said. Speaking of OxyContin, it's quite a medication list you've got. These are all your current doses? I wish, she conceded. But I'm out now, so if you won't help me, I'm going to have to go over to the ER and have me a good old case of respiratory failure. It'll buy me the admission to the hospital and at least a couple of days of meds. Of course, it keeps me on your druggy shit list, but I don't have much choice. Girl's gotta live. She was right. Going suddenly without her medications would certainly precipitate respiratory decompensation, possibly even a ventilator and a stay in the ICU. Her med list was impressive. Although I knew there were doctors who prescribed such doses for a price, I didn't think there were any around here. You've been getting these medications by prescription from somebody, I asked. Some buddies might be a better word, she admitted. But don't worry, you don't know them. They're in New York. And it's not cheap. $200 cash every 2 weeks for the visit, plus the medications, plus the bus fare. Don't leave you much to live on. Even with your assets, I said. Yeah, even with them, she smiled ruefully. Listen, Doc, I'd love to chat, but I'm running out of wind, and I gotta know, what are you gonna do? You gonna help me or not? Out of wind she had been for some time. Our conversation took much longer than is written, as Brittany had to stop at the end of each sentence, and sometimes mid-sentence, to regain her breath. Despite her past behaviors, my heart went out to her. You know, I'd like to, I said, but you're on more medication than I ever prescribed. You bet your sweet ass, I said. And you know who did it for me? Your precious buddies. I was all of 14 when one of my CF doctors suggested I try some oxygenate to help with my breathing. He assured me that I didn't have to worry about becoming addicted. Funny thing is, I think he actually believed it. Probably did, I said. That would have been around 2000, right? Right. He started low, didn't want to compromise my health. He said, that's another hoot, she said. Of course, every 6 months or so, my tolerance increased and I needed an extra boost in my dose. No moral value in pain, he would always say. And he went along with all of it, just as accommodating as you please. Well, 6 years ago, he retired and a new doctor came to the clinic. Arrogant son of a bitch he was. Told me I was an addict, as if I didn't know that. And that he was going to taper me off my meds and get me into a rehab program. That's when I tried to strangle him and bit the security guard. Yeah, they hauled me off to court on assault charges. Judge sent me to see a psychiatrist for evaluation. She made a face. What? I knew him. The psychiatrist? Yeah. You were his patient? Nope, never saw him before. But I knew him all right, better than he thought. How so? My cousin. Your cousin was his patient? Nope, my cousin sold him stuff. Stuff? Caviar. Your cousin is an importer? She laughed. Well, you could say that, but it's not the caviar you're thinking of. At least I hope not. This caviar may have been fishy, but it doesn't come from no fish. I don't understand. My cousin is a dealer. Caviar is his specialty. It's a mixture of coke and weed. The shrink was one of his best customers. And you know what the funniest thing is? First off, he wants to know my family history. So I told him. My dad's an alkie. My mom's on methadone. My older brother died of an OD, and my younger one is a crackhead. My uncle, my cousin's dad, he used to give us perks as a reward for doing chores for him. After I told him all that, you know what he told me? That addiction ran in my family. I almost said he should know. Of course, the whole time he was talking to me, he never once looked me in the eye. The silicone stare? Yep. Told me I had PTSD and ADD, and oh yeah, bipolar too. Regular Siggy he was. You're talking about Sigmund Freud, the analyst? I'm talking about Sigmund Freud, the cokehead. That shrink told me he understood my problems, which I bet he did. Would have given me back my stims too, except he wanted to see me every week for therapy. I wasn't that hard up. And ever since then, you've had to go south for your meds. Well, not right off. For a couple of years, I could find a doctor here and a doctor there who would give me some. And as long as I kept switching pharmacies and swiped a few extra prescriptions from his pad, I did okay. But then the damn monitoring system came in, and I had to go to the Big Apple. I see. I'm surprised, though. That dose of opiates added to all those benzos? It's not a very safe combination. Might knock me for a loop, she snorted. Tell me, Doc, do I look like someone who's about to OD? She did not. Of course, if you want to give me my stims back just to keep me on the alert, I wouldn't say no. Used to get them when I was a kid, you know. But after I got the oxys and the Ambien for sleep, and they started checking my urine, they found I had THC. And they told me they couldn't give me Adderall if I was smoking pot. Told them I never smoked it, but that didn't help. I guess their limit was 3 poisons. Anyway, it doesn't do much. I can't get high on anything anymore. Marijuana does help me sleep, though. How about your CF meds? Well, sometimes I take them, but mostly I don't. I don't see the point. I'm just about at the end of my rope, you know. Life expectancy, as you call it, for someone born in 1985 isn't even 30. So I'm living on stolen time. The thing of it was, I liked her. She was sassy and spunky and smart. And she had a sense of humor. She had a terrible disease, and she was right. She did not have long to live. But she didn't let it get to her. She deserved whatever break she could get. Okay, I said. Okay, everything? The Xanax and the Ambien? Yeah, I know, she said. It's a bit much. Tell the truth, Doc. I get my oxys regular, and I get my vape at night. I can live with that. One thing, though, Doc. Yeah? You ain't exactly a spring chicken. I mean, how long am I going to last? Not to put too fine a point on it. Okay, I'll make you a deal. Okay, I won't retire until you die. Deal. So that's the story of Brittany. And I should, people sometimes ask me, is it true? Now, we've learned about false facts in recent years. So I have to say that with all the characters in my book and all the situations, none of the people and none of the events actually happened, but everything in the book is entirely true. In fact, there is a person whom I did take care of who had a story that is very similar to this. It just didn't happen to be Brittany.
Thanks so much for reading for us tonight. We'd like to open it up for questions now. Anybody want to raise their hand? Is that Walker? I see a hand raised. You can unmute if you'd like and ask your question. And if you don't want to unmute and talk, anybody else, you're welcome to add it in the chat and we'll read it out.
Well, I've unmuted. Can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah, my name is Tom, not Walker. Walker's my grandson. I'm not quite sure how that name got on there. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Beach.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Beach.
Hi. Do I know you?
Yes.
Well, first of all, Beach, thank you for introducing us to the book and to your sense of humor, which I find very interesting that you use humor extremely well as a tool for both professional and public education, I'd say. And but I'm a little curious about cynicism, being cynical. And I'm wondering where perhaps in your career you may have begun to recognize that, well, things weren't exactly the way we thought they were. And where that might have taken place and when you decided to maybe use that or to develop that to be creative in your writing.
You mean, when did I finally discover that we didn't know what we were talking about most of the time?
Yeah, well, maybe you put it that.
It wasn't right away. It probably wasn't until I got to the town I worked in Vermont, where people pointed out to me that I was a whippersnapper and didn't have a clue to what he was doing. And then I realized when I look back over my career that we were entirely too much taken with ourselves. In the first book, I write about the disease that I was always the most afraid of, which was seriosity. And I find that humor and cynicism are probably the best protections I can use against getting infected with that, because it is, as you know, endemic in our profession.
Well, I think I would agree, although I think in the last perhaps 15 or 20 years, as I see a change in the demographics of the medical students, that may be evolving in a different way. What do you think?
Yes, I think it's helped that there's a lot less testosterone in the medical profession now.
Yeah,
that made a huge difference.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, good, you have to.
But thank you for a fine discussion. And I think the reading that you just gave us really was sort of the seminal point of the book, in the sense of revealing what a patient has to go through who has very few resources and who has found herself in the situation she is because of the way she had been cared over many years. So thank you. You're
welcome.
Thank you for
that.
Brittany
is not only my favorite character, but she's Trina's favorite character also. And as I say, there was a woman who was very similar, who had an experience that I described later in the book when she was in the hospital, where she managed to convert the entire nursing staff to her side by the simple matter of using her gambling skills, which I won't go into detail about, but it was quite a story and it really happened. It's true anyway.
Thank you. I'm going to unmute now in case someone else wants. Oh, Molly wants to say something.
Hello, Beach. It's
Hi, Molly.
I have been reading the book. We have been getting to know you as a friend, and I look forward to the book, I think, as a way of getting to know you in a way that I probably wouldn't have. I know how that sounds. It sounds a little convoluted, but the book I thought was going to really give me a perspective on you professionally, on your past life and so forth, which it has. And I think you have answered this question already, which was, as I was reading, I was thinking, is this true? Is this what happened? Is this how much of this, what is fiction and what is fact? But I think you have sorted that out in your response. And if you want to say something further about that, that would be great.
I always say something further, but I have a question first. I'm worried about something you just said.
What?
Are you sharing the book with Tom?
Yes.
You don't have your own copy.
Well,
You know, there's a number, there'll be a number up at the top there you can call. The problem is the way the book is written, once it's been read, it loses a lot of its meaning. So if you're reading over somebody's previous meaning, you'll lose a lot of it. So you really should have your own copy.
You know, I think, Beach, that's probably what has happened.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Yes. Yes.
And that reminds me, now I've forgotten what your question was about.
Well,
True. Well,
yeah.
there was a very famous book called The Education of Henry Adams, which I will somewhat quote. And in it, the author starts off by saying, an historian, if he wants to be true to history, must falsify the facts. So what happens to me is that, let's say I'm working in the office or in the emergency room of the hospital, and I'll be taking care of a patient. And then all of a sudden, somebody, let's say in this case, Brittany, starts speaking to me. She said, hey, Beach, did you know what happened to me? And then she will tell me her story and I write it down. And it works much better than taking lithium or any of the antipsychotic drugs, because it keeps me on an even keel. At least that's what the people I work with say. So it is, I consider these things completely true. The details, you know, it's kind of like You Are There, that old TV show, only the names have been changed to protect the innocent. That was Dragnet. Anyway, it's close enough most of the time. You can believe it.
No, thank you. Thank you. And one thing that I particularly enjoyed reading the book as a lay person is your exposition of medical things, the insights I'm getting into a system. I have really only one source, more or less.
Completely untrustworthy.
and I have particularly enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you.
And we do have one question in the chat. Somebody's wondering where exactly is the town of Dumpster. Could you tell us?
Well, if they know where Windsor is, and they know where Woodstock is, and they know where Pomfret is, it's sort of, they can triangulate, it's in between them, among them. So if you triangulate, let's say Pomfret, Woodstock, and Windsor, it's right in the middle. Now, you won't be able to find it on a map, but that's not my fault, because for those of us who work there and those of us who live there, it's a completely real town. But it's close to the Connecticut River.
Okay, thanks. Vermont has a few of those towns, I think. Anybody else like to unmute and ask some questions or have a comment to share? Looking for hands here.
You're unmuted. I think you're unmuted.
Okay, please.
Hey!
You there.
Hey,
Hello there,
this is
Beach.
Eldon.
Hello.
He has a comment, I believe.
No, I
A question?
was fascinated by your discussion. I spent a year working with folks with cystic fibrosis.
Yeah, you worked with Harvey Schwachman, didn't you?
Yes,
Yeah.
I was, yeah. And one of the things I learned was that folks with cystic fibrosis really appreciate honesty. And whether you are telling the truth or not, I don't know, but I'm sure that everything else is honest.
Yes.
Congratulations on a great beginning.
And I'll remind people, he also worked in Dumpster.
Yes, that's
Yes.
right.
And we still live in Dumpster. Dumpster? I can't remember. Dumpster? Anyway,
And you were blessed with low expectations, right?
absolutely.
Okay, and so it looks like we have Donna Stark with her hand raised. You can unmute.
Hi.
Talk about the
Donna.
ghost of Christmas past.
Hi, Beach, Donna and Steve from Baltimore.
Hi.
It's great to see you, and I loved the book. It was so you. And I could also feel the evolution of who you've become through that story. It was wonderful.
I read the book first before Donna.
So I only got what was
proud of
left. I only got what was left.
and I was just disappointed that I wasn't in it. But you can only, I guess, be
There
in
is,
one
I
of your
should
books.
mention that I do, for my patients, for a small fee, I offer to put them in the book, and I should mention that to the rest of you.
And, you know, I've read all 3 of your books, right? Only 3, right? Is that the right number?
I like to mention public because it's not very good, so we'll leave it.
And they were all wonderful and all really funny. And this one just broke my heart too. The part you just read, and obviously the part later on where she reappears in the hospital, and it's just fabulous writing, going beyond your normal wonderful humor.
Well, it was, learning about these people. I was saying the other day to my daughter that until I started doing this work, pretty much all my patients, I said, were on Social Security. Now, almost all of them are younger than my youngest daughter, and quite a few are younger than my oldest granddaughter. But they are functionally, in so many ways, exactly the same in terms of struggling with a problem that doesn't go away.
Yeah.
I think all those years helped teach me to be more respectful of what they've suffered.
Beach, I was wondering, when you were practicing in Philadelphia, did you have patients that presented in similar ways, but either you didn't see it in the same way as their physician, or was this a completely new experience for you?
Well, that's a good question, because in Philadelphia at Temple Hospital, a large number of our patients were addicted. Large numbers of them had AIDS from drug use. And I would say when I went down there, I was basically clueless about their lives. In my previous book, I do tell a story about one of my patients who started to wake me up. And I think it probably was my experience there that made me realize part of what I wasn't understanding. But it certainly wasn't the case when I first went down there. I think every physician who wants to acquire some humility about her or his ability to solve problems, should work in a place like Temple or an inner city hospital. It's not like up here.
I'm sure, yeah. Well, it's wonderful to see you, and we love the book, and give our love to Trina.
I will. You both look great, by the way.
We're biking every single day.
E-bikes. We love our e-bikes.
Yes.
It takes 25 years off our lives.
Yes, exactly.
Or adds 25 to it, one way or another, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you for that. And so we do have one quick question from the chat. What advice would you give to a new rural doctor?
A new rural doctor, listen.
That's pretty much sums it up. Okay, and then so moving back to our hands, we have previously we've had Samuel with his hand raised. If you'd like to unmute and ask your question, and I see a couple of other people down there too, so I'm taking some names.
Hi, this is Samuel. I'm going to keep that photo of me up because I don't have any light around me. But so Beach, you had said at the beginning, I don't know if you were reading the introduction or you said that Trina had said one of the things for you to do is to make amends.
Mhm.
And I'm curious about how you feel this book does that, or this and expresses that.
Well, I should,
and
you
who
know,
you're making amends to.
well, remember the subtitle is The Opiate Education of a Vermont Doctor. And what got me started on this was that in the past, 10 years or so, there's been a lot of publicity about Big Pharma and what terrible people they are and what a terrible job they have done of creating this opiate addiction, of which the person Brittany is an example. And, you know, I'm pretty good at avoiding responsibility and not taking blame if I don't have to. But at the point at which my colleagues started echoing this refrain, I had to remind myself that Big Pharma wouldn't make medications unless pharmacies requested them. And pharmacies wouldn't request them unless patients came in asking for them. And the patients wouldn't ask for them unless their doctor gave them a piece of paper saying, give this to the patient. And it was in fact a physician whom I mentioned in the book named Herbert Jicks, who wrote this article in the late 1980s that opiate addiction is an overblown problem, that he'd studied a large number of patients in one of the Boston hospitals and concluded that if somebody wasn't already addicted, they wouldn't get addicted by us prescribing them pain medication. So all of a sudden, we used to go from the concept of no pain, no gain, to the idea of there's no value in pain, we should just treat it. And I'm guessing you know the story of what happened to prescriptions for opiates. That was not because of Big Pharma. They were quite happy. And of course, they redesigned some of their products so they would be patent protected. But the making amends issue was trying to treat these people like Brittany, whom we had systematically created disease and poisoned, and then refused to accept responsibility for it. And part of that was a generational thing. The doctor would say, well, I didn't prescribe those drugs, so it's not my problem. And the number of people, you know, I have now several hundred patients who are being treated for their addiction with a legal replacement drug. A substantial number of them didn't have any idea of using these drugs until somebody prescribed it for them. So that's what I'm talking about with the making amends part.
Thanks. And so Megan Duffy had a question as well.
Hey, Doc.
Hey!
I just wanted to say that I really enjoy the beginning of the book, especially where it talks a lot about the history of the OEO and the how the war on drugs came to be. And I especially enjoy the little arguments between you and Vita.
Yes, she's one of my favorite characters. In fact, there was a woman I had whose name was Vita, who lived to be 102. Yeah. Yeah, she was, you know, somebody previously asked what advice I would give to a rural doctor. Someone like Vita, who's described earlier in the book, is the kind of person that taught me a lot about how little I actually knew, which hopefully I've learned by now.
And moving to Petrie, and sorry if I'm not saying your name right. He has a question from another seasoned rural doctor as well. So if you'd like to unmute and ask.
Yes, hi, Beach. Yes,
Hi.
I'm Kent Petrie from Vail, Colorado. Good friends with our mutual friend Lori McTavish.
Yeah.
And I've had dinner with
sunlight there.
Yeah, I've had dinner with Trina, and so it's nice to meet you by video chat. But I just wanted to reassure the audience that of the truth of your book, because I've spent 40 years in rural practice in Colorado and have had so many similar experiences as yours, including the care for 20 years of an adult woman with cystic fibrosis who just happened to have very prominent silicone breast implants. Amazing.
Yep.
But I also, one of the things that I valued most and really enjoyed most in my practice has been teaching medical students. And I thought the story of Davida, the medical student who you threaded so beautifully through the book, was just perfect. And especially, you know, in terms of advice for future family doctors, future rural doctors, her list at the end of the book was just priceless. So
Yes.
thank you for sharing that. And I didn't know if you want to share a little bit about her.
Well, yeah, somebody asked about, I think Tom Rowland was asking about changes in doctors. And I should say that Davida, the medical student, is a completely synthetic character. So I took the best things in all the medical students, but I do have hope for the medical profession in the future. I don't know what you've experienced, based on the kinds of people that I see coming out of medical school now. And I do believe, as I mentioned before, that having less testosterone makes a big difference. But the students also seem to be much more aware of their position in the world than I was. I was pretty much clueless about the world. I went to high school, went to college, went to medical school, went to the CDC. I didn't really have a clue what the world was about for many years until I got to the town of Dumpster. But these students are more mature, and I think that's made a difference.
Yes, and I think they've survived the bureaucracy of their medical schools, as you make quite clear.
I think, yes. They're surviving in spite of the medical home.
Yes, exactly. And it's 120 facets, yes.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Pete.
Thanks for that. And Alan, I believe you had your hand raised as well at one point.
Beach, great to see you again. I remember old days working together in Philadelphia.
Yeah, hi.
Hi. And I think my question was really the same. I mean, I do a lot with education of medical students, and I think we are all in good hands moving forward. At least I feel better. Are there other messages that you would like to give to the doctors of the future as they move forward?
Well, I said that a little while ago. I think I was really listening impaired for the longest time in my career. And I mentioned part of my experience at Boston City Hospital back in the 60s, which when I look back on it actually made me ashamed of the fact that I felt that I knew so much without asking. And I think that's, who our old philosopher, Yogi Berra, what did he say? You can hear a lot by listening. And I think it's really, to me, it's that simple. I mean, you know a lot more than I do about this because you're working more directly with them. But they do seem generally interested in listening to people. And many of them are not as focused on finding the disease or acquiring the facts, and the databases that we have to work with, they're huge now. So it's easy to get buried in that, and make sure that you've learned all the 27 causes of whatever it is. But the better ones don't get sucked into that. I don't know what your experience is.
Now, I would agree. I think they're focused on doing what's right for society. They're thinking about social justice. They're thinking about what's going to make the world better. So I feel very confident in moving forward.
That's reassuring. So it's going to be okay to retire.
Thanks for that. So Linda.
Hello, darling.
Oh my goodness!
I do water therapy.
Oh my goodness!
I only wanted to,
Christmas past.
Right. I only wanted to say I can hardly wait for you to come down again. I miss your humor, and please bring your book.
Okay.
I have no access to it.
All right, I will.
And send my love to Trina for me, please.
Okay, sweetie.
Thank you. See you soon, I hope.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
These are some of my favorite events when everybody seems to know everybody, or at least the author is really connected. It's extra fun. And so with a hand raised, Nadia? I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Hi, this is Matthias.
Hey, kid.
Hello. So I was wondering if I was old enough to read your book, and if not, which ones of your books I was old enough to read.
You should read my first book first. And by the time you get through that, we'll see about the last one.
All right.
So tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yes. If you don't have a copy, you might be able to walk back into the backyard and find one.
All right. We have a copy.
Yeah. Don't you think that would be best to start with?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
I should mention with a disclaimer, that was my grandson.
I'm surprised he hasn't already read it.
Yeah, I am too, and I'll have to bring that up.
And so Judith had a hand raised. I've lost Judith.
Yes, hi. Hi, Beach.
Hi.
This is greetings from Berkeley.
Yes, my goodness.
Okay, I was happy to see that Berkeley appears in your book.
Yes, it does. I said the other day to someone, I went into the office. We now wear scrubs in the office because it's supposed to be purified. So I was saying that, you know, when I went to work at the community health center I'm working at now, that was the same job that I had with you when I first started my career. And I felt that I'd gone back to my youth. Now I'm going into the job wearing the kind of stuff I wore when I was in my professional infancy. So I feel I've regressed even further. I'm a little bit nervous about what's going to happen next.
Well, I just wanted to say, having worked with you happily at South of Market Health Center in San Francisco, which was one of your first domains, that I think you were a good listener back then. I don't think you should lessen that ability in retrospect. And maybe you feel like you've learned to listen differently or gotten better at it, but my memory of you was as a good listener back then. And also, interestingly enough, my memory is that you also had experience with addiction and drugs patients back then, because South of Market Health Center, for those of you who don't know what that was in San Francisco, in those days, we had a lot of variety in the people who came in there for medical care. We had Filipino immigrant community, we had homeless alcoholics, we had heroin addicts. And I remember very clearly Beach teaching me how to incise and drain, I&D as we call it, the abscesses of the heroin addicts who had become what we called skin poppers because they couldn't find a vein anymore. So they were injecting it into their skin. And even though I had been an intern and resident at San Francisco General, I had not really learned how to do that properly. But South of Market was where you taught me that. So my question, Beach, besides hello and greetings from Berkeley, is what percentage would you guess of your current clientele, of the people you are working with their addiction, what percentage of them came into this problem from having started on opiate prescriptions?
About 30%.
About 30%. And the rest from street drugs?
All of them started with prescription drugs.
Yeah.
But about 30% of them were prescribed it. The others got it from somebody else who was prescribed
Got it from somebody else. And the ones who got it from somebody else got opiates. They were not heroin or...
Not at first. It was quite uncommon for somebody to start with heroin. Because, you know, the people, by the time I see these patients, this disease has been with them for quite a few years. It's kind of like diabetes. You don't see them in the first few months unless type 1. But so they acquired this most commonly in their teenage years when they were, you know, if they hadn't been prescribed it, they were looking for something new and exciting. And what they were offered almost as soon as they were offered marijuana and alcohol was prescription opiates.
Yeah. So about 30% started with
30% started, had no idea using it.
Physicians or dentists gave them the prescription.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
the
last
yeah.
question, and then I will retreat here and leave the floor to others. Do you think the Candy Crush test has a future?
I don't know.
Okay, just curious.
I find it, I think if it could be administered to all kids early on, it would be very useful. But my guess is you won't find any controls right now because everybody seems to play it.
Okay, and send my love to Trina.
Okay.
And are there any other questions? Anybody else want to? Joan.
Hi. Can you hear
Oh
me?
my goodness, hi.
I think of all the people here, I've probably known you longer than anybody else. And it's nice to know that you're still the same person as you were back at medical school. And this has been fun. And I'm really happy to see Linda. And I hope that you and Linda and Trina and Bruce and I will be together soon.
That would be lovely.
And Ed. Ed, you're still muted. There you go.
Okay, first of all, I've known Beach longer. I've played golf with him. I've run a marathon with him. I went to college with him, and so many other things. And my only question and complaint, Beach, is why weren't there more equations in your book?
Well, I should have consulted with you on that.
That's right.
But everything being equal, I didn't feel that that was as necessary.
Well, at least you mentioned the word equal, so I appreciate
yes,
it.
Yes, right.
Okay. And any last couple of questions or comments anybody would like to share? Oh, Lori.
Hi, Beach.
Hi.
Question.
Yeah.
The Queen of Hearts plaque, true?
Yeah. Pardon?
True or false?
Yes.
Yeah.
You only get one question.
Yeah, right. That was a nice touch. But I wanted to say that I also really appreciated, as I told you previously, this is my favorite book of yours. Well written. I love the way you ended 90% of the chapters. It was really poignant, and especially, of course, the last one.
Yeah.
That was so poignant, and I hope many docs read your book. Well done.
I hope they buy it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true too. But also, you know, you pushed drugs on someone on this call when he was 5 years old with M&Ms and ice cream, so that we could get vitamins down him.
Well, you have to make do with what you have.
And you did it when it was great.
No. That was Advil, and you told me to take it like an M&M, which I sued, for the record. And it was horrible. The doctor prescribed it was misdirected. But thank you.
Well, you know, it is. It's very true with many people. I always used to say that I was blessed in the early part of my career that informed consent had not yet been invented. And so it was with no guilty conscience whatsoever that we did things like that. But you see, you've survived.
Thank you. Thanks to you.
So we have a question from Leo, or a comment from Leo, and then Colleen also. So we'll start with Leo.
Hi, Beach. It's wonderful to see. Yeah.
So what about 23 kids?
What'd you say?
What about these 23 kids?
23 kids? Oh, I can't even talk to that. But I'm happy to hear that you know about it. I just wanted to tell you that there's no other doctor like you. Honestly, I've been working now for, I don't know, 12, 15 years. I haven't met anybody who can work with people with such compassion and humor and give folks the sort of kick in the rear that they need, and that you do it so gracefully. And I just wanted you to know that there's nobody like you. And I hear you guys say that you're excited about the future and what younger folks are bringing to the profession, but we're losing a lot too. You know, we're losing that confidence, and I think younger professionals are always considering the risks of everything they're doing way more than they're considering like this connection that you value and you sort of put in the forefront. And I think we're trying to hold on to that, but I think we're also losing it a little bit. So I just wanted to thank you for what you've given.
Well, thank you. But I got to say, coming from you, I consider that a real compliment, because I consider you to be the reason I'm hopeful about the future. Not just you, but you and your type.
And Colleen, I believe you had a hand raised.
Hi, Beach. Hi,
Hello.
Trina, if you're there. So I want to ask the question that all the reading public wants to know now that they've read this book, and I'm happy that everyone's buying it and not getting it from the library. Those copies are nowhere near as
Yeah,
good
they're no good at all.
of that book. And but you know, the public wants to know, what are you working on next?
Well, I am basically, I'm stalling right now, okay? But I have, because of all this interest in coronavirus, basically I've been doing some work in which I'm addressing our fascination with new diseases to the extent of ignoring our old diseases, and how it's kind of like, you know, you need a new video game every few weeks to maintain your attention, that our medical attention span is getting shorter and shorter. So we have to continue to have new sets of diseases to keep our interest. But I also have to say that since you have come on the line, that you're responsible for my literary career, for better and for worse. Because if you hadn't read my first book and decided it's worth publication, I might still be working just as a doctor. So I want to thank you for that.
That might be it. Well, you're very welcome. It's been one of the joys of my life to work with you on your books. It really has. And I have been wondering, you have all kinds of things going in your head to do. I can think of no one better to write a farce or some kind of comic tragedy to do with all of the kind of characters we've got going on in the medical world every day, whether they're in congressional hearings or on CNN. I can think of no one who could lampoon a number of them better, and bring, as you described, the truth through the blends of the characters.
Okay, here's the deal. I'll do the lyrics if you do the score.
Okay. It'll be a libretto, okay.
Not her, him.
Okay. And anyone, we have time for maybe one or two final questions or comments. And if not, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Todd.
Well, that was really amazing. Thank you so much, Beach, for doing that. And thanks everybody for coming. Renee, great introduction. Michelle, as always, great behind the scenes. Really appreciate that. And thank you everybody for coming. One of the things that we've noticed in this age of COVID, since we can't meet in person, these Zoom events have been amazing because people from all over can join. And so that is a blessing and a surprise aspect to not being able to meet in person, is that we can meet virtually, but it's easier to meet from across the country. And so thank you all for joining us from wherever you are. Beach, thanks again for everybody. And once again, if you've ordered a book from us, Beach is going to come in the next couple of days to personalize them, and then we'll either give you a call if it's for store pickup, or we'll get it right out in the mail to you. And the USPS is taking about a week to 10 days to get things to everybody. So once again, I want to, on behalf of Phoneix Books, thank everybody, and thank Beach once more. And have a great night, everybody. Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beach.
Good night.
Take care. Miss ya.
Bye, Beach.
Bye,
Stay
Beach.
well. Stay well.
Thank you,
Stay
Beach.
well.